Now, in the face of Donald Trump's tariff threats, there is a renewed push for Canada to diversify its trade options. Some experts are calling for bolstering trade links with Commonwealth countries, including my next guest, James Skinner. James is the CEO of CANZUK International, an advocacy organization promoting free movement, free trade, and foreign policy between Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and the UK. And he joins us live from Vancouver. James, appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you, Andrew. Good to be with you.
So I just, before we get into all this, were you able to hear a little bit of what we just heard there from the president and also the prime minister of the UK when it came to, and the question was around the threats that Donald Trump has made about annexation through economic force? Where has King Charles been? Has King Charles said anything? Is King Charles concerned that King Charles is the king of Canada, even though it's a symbolic role? What did you make of Keir Starmer's response to that question?
I cannot say I'm surprised about there not being anything from the monarchy about this. I mean, the monarchy, even back to the days of, Queen Elizabeth, has been very much hush about getting involved with these sorts of things. Don't complain, don't explain, I believe the phrase is. So it doesn't surprise me at all that he's not really come out and said anything about this, albeit the comments can be somewhat inappropriate. I'm sure many will, agree or disagree. I think for the better part, a lot of it is just simply trolling on behalf of President Trump's narrative. Would he pursue Canada as a 51st state? I don't think so in real life, but I think, in reality, it could potentially resort to something that perhaps there's an economic deal coming down the line. But that's neither here nor there. That's simply speculation on my behalf, and we'll see what happens.
But James, and I'm going to leave this, but I just want to ask you a follow-up question on that. I mean, that the British Prime Minister wouldn't, I don't know, say something nice about Canada. Maybe he didn't want to get into it, but that, we respect the sovereignty of Canada or something. I don't know. I mean, it was just kind of one of those questions about, do you have concerns about the kind of talk that comes from Donald Trump? And he says it seriously. Yes, it could be part of deal making or whatever, but we have the Canadian Prime Minister who has said this is a real thing. This is an ambition for Donald Trump. So for Keir Starmer to respond in that way, just thoughts.
I agree with you. I think it would have been nice to have seen Prime Minister Starmer stand up for Canada a little bit more. I think reality is that, taking it from the government's perspective, playing devil's advocate here, I think reality is the United Kingdom, along with many other countries, are kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place, really. Obviously, they are trying to avoid tariffs or further economic measures on top of those tariffs with the world's largest superpower. And of course, any indication that they are trying to rattle the cage of Donald Trump by perhaps, not doing his bidding or perhaps, saying something that he doesn't like could rattle his cage even further and lead to potentially more economic problems down the line. So as much as I would love to have seen more supportive rhetoric from Prime Minister Starmer, I do understand the position he's in. I think a lot of countries around the world are in that position right now.
Does it feel as though, this is a leading question, so I'll just say it up front, does it feel as though Canada was kind of thrown under the bus?
Good question. I wouldn't say officially. I mean, if there was an avenue out for the UK and perhaps many other countries, perhaps there was no ramifications for supporting Canada, then I would agree. But again, like I've said, a lot of countries around the world, they're seeing what Trump is doing and they're seeing that they're, putting a lot of pressure on Canada. It's its closest neighbor, arguably one of its closest allies. And it's putting the pressure on them right now. And a lot of countries around the world are probably thinking, wow, if they're going to do this to Canada, what could they possibly do to our nation as well? What sanctions could they put on us? What tariffs could, President Trump put on us? Because, it's undoubted that President Trump right now, he has an agenda of his own. He doesn't take orders from anybody. He's happy to do whatever he needs to do to make America great again, in his opinion. So I think a lot of countries are feeling the sting of that. They're feeling the pressure of that, and they don't want to aggravate anything right now at this sensitive time. So, like I said before, I think it'd be great if more countries, including Australia, New Zealand, and the UK, would come to the defense of Canada. But I think it's such a sensitive, delicate time right now that, all these countries understandably are being quite careful about what they say and do.
Yeah. First World War, Second World War, fighting with Britain, for freedom and all of that. I mean, there's also the historical context to this too, right? That just, I don't know, might kind of feel a little bit stunning to people. These countries have a combined GDP of roughly $6.5 trillion, getting back to the discussion that we were initially going to have, and that is between Australia, New Zealand, and the United Kingdom. Do you think strengthening the ties with these countries could be a viable replacement to reduced trade with the U.S.?
Absolutely. And let me just start by saying, what is currently going on with the United States, albeit not Canada's fault. It is unfortunate that, we have had a very close relationship with the United States for many, many decades. They've been a strong, independent partner for us, trading partner. And now what we're seeing now in recent weeks and months is obviously President Trump is putting a lot of pressure on. And, certainly I think a lot of Canadians will agree that the relationship between Canada and the U.S.A. has certainly deteriorated over the last couple of months. However, the silver lining to that, however, is that Canada is very much in a good position, that we do have very supportive allies throughout the world, no more so than Australia, New Zealand, and the United Kingdom. Obviously, we at CANZUK International, we've been pushing the CANZUK issue for quite a while. Obviously, CANZUK being an acronym of those 4 countries. And that could be things, along increased mobility between citizens, trade, foreign policy collaboration. And it just simply makes sense. We share the same head of state. We have the same common law legal system, shared history, as you rightfully said, Andrew. We have ties to the Commonwealth, respect for democracy, human rights, the rule of law, linguistic ties to the English language. The list goes on and on and on. So while it is unfortunate that right now we are in this predicament with the United States, and President Trump is certainly putting a lot of pressure on, there is a silver lining that we do have an opportunity right now to explore closer ties with very close allies abroad, being Australia, New Zealand, and the UK. And I think it really should be a priority for prime ministers of all 4 of those countries to get together and say, hey, you know what? We understand that the world is changing. We understand that the US is not the partner that we once thought it would be. How about we come together and we see what we can do to make our nations and our citizens more prosperous and secure?
James, thank you. James Skinner is the CEO of CANZUK International. He joined us this afternoon live from Vancouver.
Thank you.